The old clock on the wall showed 6:15 when little Rosie pressed her face against the cold window of the Riverside Music Academy. Inside, she could see students in their neat uniforms rushing between practice rooms, carrying instruments and sheet music like they were the most precious things in the world. Rosie wasn't one of them. She was just waiting. Waiting for her mama to finish cleaning the floors so they could go home. Every evening was the same. School ended at 3, and Rosie would walk the 12 blocks to the academy, her backpack heavy with homework she rarely had time to finish. She'd sit on the wooden bench in the main hallway, trying to be invisible, try not to bother anyone. The students never really looked at her. To them, she was just part of the furniture. Just another poor kid whose parent worked there. Nothing special, nothing worth noticing. But Rosie noticed everything. She noticed how the tall boy with glasses always played the same difficult piece over and over, getting frustrated when his fingers stumbled on the fast parts. She noticed the girl with the red hair who cried sometimes after her lessons, even though she played beautifully. She noticed how the music teachers walked with their heads high, like they knew secrets the rest of the world would never understand. Most of all, Rosie noticed the sounds. The building was filled with music from the moment she arrived until the moment she left. Piano melodies floated through closed doors. Violin strings sang from the upper floors. Sometimes she could hear someone playing the cello, and the deep, said notes made her chest feel tight. Her mama worked hard, really hard. She cleaned 15 practice rooms every night, plus the main recital hall, the teacher lounges, all 3 bathrooms. Her mama's hands were rough and red from scrubbing, and she always smelled like cleaning products by the time they walked home together. "Why do you like sitting here so much, baby?" her mama had asked her once. "You could wait in the break room where it's warmer." Rosie couldn't explain it properly. How could she tell her mama that the music made her feel things she didn't have words for? That when she closed her eyes and listened, she could see colors. That somehow, even though she'd never touched a real piano, she understood what the notes were supposed to do. So she just said, "I like the sounds, Mama." Tonight, like every Tuesday night, Rosie sat on her bench doing math homework while the sounds of the academy swirled around her. From practice room 3, someone was playing something bouncy and happy. From room 7, she heard scales going up and down, like someone climbing stairs that never ended. But the sound that caught her attention came from the main recital hall. Someone was playing the big concert piano. And whatever they were playing was different from everything else she'd ever heard here. It wasn't just notes. It was a story. It was beautiful and sad at the same time, like remembering something wonderful that was gone forever. Rosie closed her math book. She couldn't focus on numbers when music like that was in the air. She walked slowly toward the recital hall, her sneakers quiet on the polished floor. The door was slightly open, and she peeked inside. A woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun sat at the piano, her fingers moving across the keys, like water flowing over rocks, smooth, natural, perfect. The woman was one of the senior teachers. Rosie had seen her before, but never heard her play. Students whispered about her in the hallways, saying she'd performed in famous concert halls. All over the world before she came to teach at the academy, Rosie stood very still, barely breathing, afraid that any sound would break the spell. The music filled the huge room, bouncing off the high ceiling, wrapping around the velvet curtains, settling into every corner. It was the most beautiful thing Rosie had ever heard. When the last note faded away, Rosie realized she had tears on her cheeks. She quickly wiped them away, but not before the teacher turned and saw her standing there. "How long have you been listening, child?" the woman asked. Her voice wasn't angry, just curious. "I'm sorry," Rosie said quickly, stepping back. "I didn't mean to bother you. I was just... Come here." The teacher gestured to her. "What's your name?" "Rosie, ma'am. My mama cleans here. I wait for her to finish work." The teacher studied her for a moment. "Did you like what I was playing?" Rosie nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "Do you know what it was called?" Rosie shook her head. "Clair de lune. It means moonlight. A French composer named Debussy wrote it over 100 years ago." The teacher smiled slightly. "You have good taste, Rosie. Most 8-year-olds prefer something with a faster beat." I'm 9, Rosie said softly, and I like all kinds of music. The fast ones are nice too, but this one, it made me think of watching the moon from my bedroom window. The teacher's eyebrows went up. That's exactly what it's supposed to make you think of. You have a musical ear, child. She stood up from the piano bench. Have you ever played piano before? No, ma'am. We don't have one. Would you like to try? Just for a moment. Rosie's heart jumped so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. Really, I can touch it? Just don't tell anyone I let you. Come on. One quick try before I have to go. Rosie approached the grand piano like it was made of glass. Up close, it was even more beautiful than she'd imagined. The black surface was so shiny she could see her reflection in it. The keys looked like perfect teeth, white and black in a pattern she'd memorized from watching through doorways. Sit down, the teacher said. Pulling out the bench, Rosie sat, and suddenly she felt very small. Her feet didn't even touch the floor. The piano seemed enormous, like something built for giants. Just press one key, the teacher said. Any key you like? Rosie lifted her right hand, her fingers shaking slightly, and pressed down on a white key near the middle. The sound that came out was clear and perfect and seemed to hang in the air forever. She pressed another key, then another. The sounds were different, but somehow related, like members of the same family. Those 3 notes you just played form a chord, the teacher said quietly. Most people choose random notes their first time. You chose ones that sound good together. Rosie wanted to play more, but she heard footsteps in the hallway. Her mama's footsteps. I have to go, she said, jumping up from the bench. Rosie, the teacher called as she headed for the door. Come by the recital hall tomorrow evening, same time. I'll be here. Rosie nodded and ran out just as her mama appeared with her cleaning cart. There you are, baby. Ready to go home? Yes, Mama. They walked through the darkening streets toward their small apartment. Rosie's fingers still tingled from touching the keys. She had played a piano. An actual piano. Just 3 notes. But they were her notes. Her sounds. Her music? She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. Tomorrow would come, and the teacher would be waiting. Tomorrow, Rosie would discover something that had been inside her all along. It's waiting for someone to notice. Tomorrow, the invisible girl would begin to be seen. Rosie couldn't sleep that night. She lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling, her fingers moving in the air like she was pressing invisible piano keys. The 3 notes she'd played kept echoing in her mind, clear and perfect as church bells. Her mama had noticed she was quiet during dinner. Something on your mind, baby? Rosie had just shrugged and pushed her rice around her plate. How could she explain what she was feeling? It was like she'd been thirsty her whole life without knowing it. Someone had finally given her a sip of water. The next day at school dragged on forever. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had to call her name 3 times during math class because Rosie was staring out the window, lost in thought. Rosie, are you with us? I asked you what 7 times 8 equals. 56, Rosie answered automatically, but her mind was already far away, counting down the hours until she could return to the academy. When the final bell rang, she practically ran the 12 blocks. She arrived sweaty and out of breath, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. The academy's heavy front door had never felt so heavy as she pulled it open. The gray-haired teacher was already in the recital hall, sitting at the piano with her eyes closed. For a moment, Rosie thought she might be sleeping. Then the woman's eyes opened, and she smiled. Right on time. I like that. Close the door behind you, Rosie. Rosie did as she was told, her heart hammering in her chest. Come sit. The teacher patted the bench beside her. My name is Mrs. Chen. I've been teaching piano for 32 years, and in all that time, I've learned to recognize something special when I see it. Rosie sat down carefully, her hands folded in her lap. Yesterday, you chose 3 notes that formed a C major chord. That was luck, perhaps. But the way you listened to Claire de Lune, that wasn't luck. You weren't just hearing the music. You were feeling it, understanding it. Mrs. Chen turned to face her. Tell me the truth. Have you really never played piano before? Never, ma'am. We can't afford lessons. Mama says maybe when I'm older and she saves up enough, but that's just something she says to make me feel better. I know we'll never have that kind of money." Mrs. Chen was quiet for a moment. "What if I told you that money doesn't have to be part of this equation?" Rosie's eyes widened. "I don't understand. I'm proposing a trade. Every evening you come here at 6 o'clock. I teach you piano for 30 minutes. In exchange, you don't tell anyone about our lessons. Not the other students. Not the academy director. Just you, me, and eventually your mother. Deal, but why?" Rosie whispered. "Why would you do that for free?" Mrs. Chen smiled, and for the first time, Rosie saw something sad in that smile. "Because 40 years ago, I was a girl like you. Poor. Nobody special. And someone gave me a chance. Now it's my turn to pass that gift along. So, do we have a deal?" Rosie nodded so hard her neck hurt. "Yes, ma'am. Yes." "Good. Now, let's begin with the basics." That first lesson, Mrs. Chen taught Rosie how to sit properly, how to curve her fingers, how to find middle C simple things that would have bored most kids. But to Rosie, every tiny detail felt like discovering buried treasure. "The piano has 88 keys," Mrs. Chen explained. "Each one is a different note. When you combine them in certain ways, you create harmony. When you play them in a sequence, you create melody. Music is just patterns, Rosie. Beautiful patterns." Rosie played her first scale that day. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, up and down. Her fingers stumbled. She hit wrong keys. But Mrs. Chen was patient, showing her again and again until the movements started to feel natural. "Enough for today," Mrs. Chen said after 30 minutes. "Tomorrow, same time." And Rosie, practice at home, even without a piano. Move your fingers on the table. Hear the notes in your mind. Music isn't just about the instrument. It's about understanding the language. That night, Rosie did exactly that. While her mama cooked dinner, Rosie sat at their tiny kitchen table. Her fingers pressing down on the worn wood, imagining the sounds. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Her mama noticed. "What are you doing, baby?" "Just practicing something for school," Rosie lied. The guilt felt bad in her stomach, but she'd made a promise to Mrs. Chen. The lessons continued. Every single evening, while the other students packed up and went home to their nice houses, Rosie slipped into the recital hall. Mrs. Chen was always there. Always ready, always patient. By the end of the first week, Rosie could play simple melodies with her right hand. "Mary had a little lamb. Twinkle, twinkle. Little star." Baby songs, maybe. But Rosie played them like they were the most important pieces of music ever written. By the second week, Mrs. Chen introduced her left hand. "This is harder," she warned. "Your brain has to think about 2 different things at the same time." It was hard. Really hard. Rosie's hands wanted to do the same thing, like they were connected by invisible strings. But slowly, with practice, they learned to be independent. The breakthrough came on a Thursday evening. Mrs. Chen had been teaching her a simple piece called Ode to Joy. Right hand played the melody. Left hand played supporting notes. Rosie had been struggling with one particular measure for 20 minutes. Her fingers kept tangling up. She could feel frustration building in her chest, hot and tight. "Take a breath," Mrs. Chen said gently. "Close your eyes. Don't think about your fingers. Think about the sound you want to create. Hear it first, then let your hands follow." Rosie closed her eyes. She heard the melody in her mind, perfect and clear. She took a deep breath and let her fingers move. And suddenly it worked. Both hands playing together, creating harmony, making music that was more than just notes. It was actual music. She opened her eyes, startled by her own success. Mrs. Chen was smiling.
"Oh,
"There it is," the older woman said softly. "That's the moment when practice becomes music. Remember this feeling, Rosie. Chase it every single time you play." 3 weeks into their secret lessons, something unexpected happened. Rosie arrived early and found Mrs. Chen talking with a man in an expensive-looking suit. He was tall, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. "Ah, Rosie," Mrs. Chen said. "This is Mr. Morrison. He's the director of the academy." Rosie's blood went cold. They'd been caught. Mrs. Chen would get in trouble, maybe lose her job. All because of her. But Mr. Morrison just smiled. "Mrs. Chen tells me you've been dusting the piano for your mother, making sure it stays clean." Rosie looked at Mrs. Chen, confused. "That's right," Mrs. Chen said smoothly. "Rosie's been very helpful. I've been showing her the proper way to care for the instrument." "Very responsible young lady." "Excellent," Mr. Morrison said. "We appreciate the extra help. Carry on." After he left, Rosie let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "He almost caught us. He suspects something," Mrs. Chen admitted. "But Morrison is a good man. He won't interfere unless he has to. Still, we need to be more careful." But being careful was getting harder, because Rosie was learning fast. Really fast. By the end of the 4th week, she was playing pieces that most students took months to master. Her fingers flew across the keys like they'd been doing it for years. Mrs. Chen started bringing more advanced music. Nothing too difficult, but challenging enough to keep Rosie engaged. A simple Mozart minuet. A short Bach prelude. Pieces with real beauty and complexity. "You have something rare," Mrs. Chen told her one evening. "Perfect pitch, I think. You can hear a note and know exactly what it is. And your musical memory. Rosie, I play something once, and you can play it back to me. Do you understand how unusual that is?" Rosie didn't. Not really. To her, it just felt natural, like breathing. On a Friday evening, exactly 5 weeks after their first lesson, something happened that changed everything. Rosie was practicing a Chopin prelude when she heard voices outside the recital hall. Angry voices. Mrs. Chen quickly closed the piano lid. "Behind the curtain, now." Rosie scrambled to hide just as the door burst open. Through a gap in the curtain, she could see 3 students. 2 boys and a girl. All older. All wearing the academy's expensive uniform. "We know someone's been using this piano after hours," the girl said, her voice sharp. "We heard music. Who's getting special treatment?" Mrs. Chen stood up, her face calm. "I've been practicing." "Is there a problem with that?" "We have recitals coming up. We need practice time. But this room is always locked or occupied." "Then I suggest you reserve your practice times properly through the office." The students left, grumbling. But Rosie knew things were getting dangerous. Someone was paying attention now. Their secret wouldn't stay secret much longer. The close call with the students made Mrs. Chen nervous. For the next week, she kept looking over her shoulder during their lessons, and she started locking the recital hall door from the inside. Rosie could feel the tension in the air, thick as fog. "Maybe we should stop," Rosie said one evening, her voice small. "I don't want you to get in trouble because of me." Mrs. Chen's hands stilled on the piano keys. "Rosie, do you know what a crime it would be to waste your gift? In 2 months, you've learned what takes most students a year. You're not just playing notes. You're making music. Real music." She turned to look at Rosie directly. "We're not stopping. We're just going to be smarter about it." But being smart wasn't always enough. It happened on a Tuesday evening, 3 months after their first lesson. Rosie's mama had asked her to bring some forgotten cleaning supplies from the storage closet near the main office. It was a simple errand that should have taken 5 minutes. Rosie was heading back through the hallway, her arms full of spray bottles and rags when she heard it. Piano music, coming from practice room 7. Nothing unusual about that, except this particular piece was one Mrs. Chen had taught her just last week. A Beethoven sonatina, and whoever was playing it wrong. Rosie knew she should keep walking, mind her own business. But the wrong notes were like fingernails on a chalkboard. Before she could stop herself, she'd set down the supplies and pushed open the practice room door. A boy about 16 years old sat at the upright piano, his face scrunched up in concentration. He was stumbling through the same measure over and over, hitting a wrong note every single time. "You're playing F sharp," Rosie said before she could stop herself. "It should be F natural." The boy's head whipped around. What? That note you keep missing? You're playing F sharp, the black key. But Beethoven wrote F natural, the white key. Rosie pointed. Right there. The boy stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Who are you? Students aren't allowed to interrupt other students' practice time. I'm not a student. I heard you struggling. I'm not struggling, the boy said, his face turning red. I'm working on a difficult passage. It's not that difficult if you play the right notes. The words came out before Rosie could think about whether she should say them. The boy stood up, angry now. Oh, really? You think you can do better? Some random kid who probably doesn't even know how to read music. Something in Rosie snapped. 3 months of hiding, of keeping quiet, of pretending she didn't know things she definitely knew. Move over, she heard herself say. What? Move over. I'll show you. The boy laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. This I've got to see, stepped away from the piano, crossing his arms. Rosie sat down at the bench. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. What was she doing? This was the exact opposite of keeping a low profile. But her hands were already on the keys. The music was already in her head. She played the passage the boy had been struggling with perfectly. Then she played the next section, and the next. Before she knew it, she'd played the entire first page of the sonatina, her fingers dancing across the keys like they'd been doing this forever. When she finished, the silence in the small practice room was deafening. Where did you learn to play like that? The boy whispered, all the anger gone from his voice. I have to go. Rosie jumped up from the bench and ran out of the room, leaving the cleaning supplies in the hallway. She didn't stop running until she reached the recital hall where Mrs. Chen was already waiting. Rosie? What's wrong? You're shaking. Messed up, Rosie gasped out. There was a boy, and he was playing wrong, and I corrected him. And then I played, and now he knows, and slowed down. Take a breath. Tell me exactly what happened. Rosie explained everything, the words tumbling out in a rush. Mrs. Chen's expression grew more serious with each sentence. Well, Mrs. Chen said when Rosie finished, I suppose it was only a matter of time. You can't hide talent like yours forever. It's like trying to keep the sun in a box. Are you mad at me? Mad? No, child. Worried? Yes, but not for the reasons you think. Mrs. Chen sat down heavily on the piano bench. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you from the beginning. Rosie sat beside her, waiting. When I started teaching you, I told myself it was just about giving you a chance, paying forward the gift someone gave me. But that wasn't the whole truth. Mrs. Chen looked at her hands. The truth is, I haven't felt excited about teaching in years. Most of my students are here because their parents force them. They see piano as a chore, an obligation. But you, Rosie, you remind me why I fell in love with music in the first place. I don't understand. I'm 72 years old. I've been thinking about retirement. But then you came along and suddenly I had a reason to stay. You're special, Rosie. Really special. And the world deserves to hear you play. But I'm just the cleaner's daughter. Nobody's going to care about the practice room door flew open. The boy from earlier stood there, and behind him were 2 other students. And behind them was someone who made Rosie's stomach drop to her feet. Mr. Morrison, the academy director. Mrs. Chen, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Would you mind explaining what's going on? Timothy here tells me he just heard a young girl play Beethoven at an advanced level. A girl who isn't enrolled in our academy. Mrs. Chen stood up, placing herself slightly in front of Rosie. Daniel, I can explain. I certainly hope so. Because right now, it looks like you've been giving unauthorized lessons to an unregistered student. Do you have any idea how many regulations that violates? I'm sorry, Rosie said, her voice shaking. Please don't blame Mrs. Chen. This is all my fault. Mr. Morrison's sharp eyes turned to her. What's your name, child? Rosie, sir. My mama cleans here. Mrs. Chen was just being nice, teaching me a little bit. And I promised we weren't hurting anyone and play something, he interrupted. What? If you're as good as Timothy claims, play something. Now, I want to hear it myself. Rosie looked at Mrs. Chen, who gave a small nod. With trembling hands, Rosie sat at the grand piano. The recital hall suddenly felt enormous, and the small crowd of people watching felt like 1,000. She could barely breathe. She closed her eyes and thought about what Mrs. Chen had taught her. Don't think about the people watching. Don't think about being scared. Think about the music. Just the music. Her fingers found the keys, and she began to play. Not the Beethoven that had gotten her into trouble, but something else. The Chopin prelude Mrs. Chen had taught her last week. It was beautiful and sad and hopeful all at once, and Rosie poured everything she was feeling into it. Every worry, every hope, every moment of the last 3 months. When the last note faded away, she opened her eyes. Mr. Morrison was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. The students' mouths were hanging open, and Mrs. Chen had tears running down her cheeks. "How long has she been playing?" Mr. Morrison asked quietly. 3 months, Mrs. Chen answered. 3 months, he repeated, like he didn't believe it. And before that, never touched a piano in her life. Mr. Morrison walked closer to the piano, studying Rosie like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "Young lady, do you understand what you just did? That piece you played takes most students 6 months to learn. And you've played it with more feeling than students twice your age. I'm sorry if I broke the rules, sir." "Rules," he laughed. "But it wasn't mean." "Yes, you broke the rules. Mrs. Chen broke the rules. But sometimes, ... He turned to Mrs. Chen. "Sometimes rules need to be broken for the right reasons, Daniel." Mrs. Chen's voice was hopeful. "We need to talk. You, me, and the board of directors. But first, I want to meet this girl's mother." "Where is she?" "Cleaning the second-floor classrooms," Rosie said. "Someone go get her, please." 10 minutes later, Rosie's mama rushed into the recital hall, panic written all over her face. "What's wrong? Is Rosie okay? Did something happen?" Mama Rosie started. "Your daughter is fine," Mr. Morrison said. "Better than fine. Mrs. Rodriguez, did you know your daughter can play piano?" Mama looked confused. "No, sir. We can't afford a piano or lessons or play for your mother, Rosie." So Rosie played again. And this time, watching her mama's face change from confusion to wonder to joy made every note feel like pure light. When she finished, her mama was crying. "My baby, my sweet baby, when did you learn to do that?" "I'll explain everything, Mama, I promise." Mr. Morrison cleared his throat. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I'd like to offer your daughter a full scholarship to Riverside Music Academy. Room and board included if needed. The finest instruction we can provide." The room went completely silent. "I don't understand," Mama whispered. "Your daughter has a gift, a once-in-a-generation talent, and we'd be honored to help her develop it." Rosie looked at her mama, then at Mrs. Chen, then at the piano that had changed everything. 3 months ago, she'd been invisible, just the cleaner's kid who nobody noticed. Now everyone was looking at her, and somehow, that was even more terrifying than being invisible had ever been. That night, Rosie and her mama sat at their small kitchen table until almost midnight, talking about everything that had happened. The scholarship offer, the chance at a real music education, the fact that their lives were about to change completely. "Are you sure this is what you want, baby?" her mama asked for the 3rd time. "Once you start down this path, people will expect things from you. Big things." Rosie thought about the feeling she got when her fingers touched the piano keys. Like coming home to a place she'd never been before. "I'm sure, Mama." Her mama reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Then we do this together. But promise me something. Promise me you'll tell me if it ever stops being fun. If it ever feels like too much, I promise." But Rosie didn't fully understand what too much meant until she started her first official day at Riverside Music Academy as a real student. Mrs. Chen met her at the front entrance, holding a uniform in a plastic bag, navy blue blazer, white shirt, plaid skirt, standard academy attire. Your mother's measurements were perfect. Rosie changed in the bathroom, barely recognizing herself in the mirror. She looked like all the other students now, like she belonged here. But wearing the uniform and actually belonging were two very different things. Her first class was Music Theory with Professor Daniels, a stern woman with glasses that made her eyes look huge. Rosie walked in and felt every pair of eyes turn toward her. The room went quiet. "You must be Rosie," Professor Daniels said. "Class, this is our newest student. I trust you'll all make her feel welcome." The way she said it made it clear this was a command, not a suggestion. Rosie slid into an empty seat near the back. The girl next to her, wearing expensive jewelry and perfect makeup, looked at her like she was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. "So you're the charity case everyone's talking about," the girl whispered. "The janitor's kid who thinks she's special." Rosie felt her face burn hot, but she kept her eyes forward. "I heard you've only been playing for 3 months," the girl continued. "That's adorable. I've been playing since I was 4. My father paid for the best teachers in the country. Victoria, is there something you'd like to share with the class?" Professor Daniels called out. "No, ma'am," Victoria said sweetly, but under the desk, she kicked Rosie's chair. The next 3 hours were brutal. Every class felt like a test she was unprepared for. Music history, advanced theory, piano technique. The other students had been studying music their whole lives. They threw around terms Rosie had never heard before. Counterpoint, diminished sevenths. Sonata formed that lunch. She sat alone in the cafeteria, picking at food she was too nervous to eat. She watched the other students laughing together at their tables, so comfortable, so confident. They'd grown up in this world. She was just visiting. "Mind if I sit?" Rosie looked up. It was Timothy, the boy who discovered her in the practice room. "It's a free country," she said quietly. He sat down with his tray. "Look, I wanted to apologize for the other day. I was being a jerk. You got me caught. I know. But honestly, best thing that could have happened? You shouldn't have to hide talent like that." He took a bite of his sandwich. "I've been playing piano for 12 years. You've been playing for 3 months, and you're already better than me. That's not an insult to you? It's just facts. I don't feel better than anyone. I feel like I don't know anything. Because you're comparing your 3 months to everyone else's 10 years. Give yourself some credit," he lowered his voice, "and ignore Victoria. Her family donated a whole wing to this building, so she thinks she owns the place. She's mean to everyone, not just you. It doesn't make me feel better. I know, but it gets easier. Promise." He stood up with his tray. "Oh, and you're going to want to practice extra hard this week. The winter showcase is in 2 months, and every new student has to perform." Rosie's stomach dropped. Perform? In front of people? In front of about 300 people. Parents, donors, music critics. It's kind of a big deal. Saw the panic on her face. "You'll be fine. You're already amazing." But Rosie didn't feel amazing. She felt terrified. That afternoon, she had her first official lesson with Mrs. Chen in the teacher's studio. It should have felt familiar and safe, but everything was different now, official, recorded, real. "How was your first day?" Mrs. Chen asked. "Everyone hates me." "Everyone?" "Okay, not everyone. But Victoria does, and probably her friends. They think I don't deserve to be here," Mrs. Chen sighed. "Rosie, do you know what you represent to students like Victoria? You represent the thing they fear most. That maybe all their expensive lessons and fancy teachers don't matter as much as natural talent. That maybe hard work and passion can beat money and privilege. That scares them. I don't want to scare anyone. I just want to play piano and play. That's all you need to do. Let your music speak for you." Mrs. Chen opened a folder of sheet music. "Now, about the winter showcase. Mr. Morrison wants you to perform something that shows what you can do. But we only have 2 months, and I don't want to push you too hard too fast." They spent the next hour looking through different pieces, trying to find the right one. Everything was either too simple or impossibly difficult. Nothing felt right. What about this? Mrs. Chen pulled out a piece Rosie had never seen before. Far Elise by Beethoven. It's famous, so the audience will recognize it. It has beautiful melodic passages that showcase musicality, but also some technical sections that will prove you can handle complexity. What do you think? Rosie studied the sheet music. I think it looks hard. It is hard. But you're not the same girl who started lessons 3 months ago. You're stronger now, better, and you have me to guide you through every measure." Mrs. Chen smiled. "We can do this together." So they began. Every day after classes, Rosie practiced Far Elise until her fingers ached. The first section came easily, the familiar melody that everyone knew. But the middle section was fast and tricky, their hands crossing over each other and notes that seemed to jump all over the keyboard. Some days were good. The notes would flow, and she'd feel like maybe she really could do this. Other days were terrible. Her fingers would stumble. She'd want to quit and go back to being invisible. The worst day came 3 weeks before the showcase. Rosie had been practicing for 2 hours, making the same mistake over and over in one particular measure. She slammed her hands down on the keys in frustration. "I can't do this. It's too hard." Mrs. Chen, who'd been grading papers in the corner, looked up calmly. "You're tired. Take a break." "I don't need a break. I need to be better." "Rosie, everyone's waiting for me to fail." "Victoria tells anyone who'll listen that I'm going to embarrass myself, that I'm not ready." And maybe she's right. Mrs. Chen set down her papers and came to the piano. "Do you remember the first time you played for me? You played 3 notes and I heard something special. That something is still there, Rosie. It hasn't gone anywhere. You haven't lost your gift. You're just tired and scared. What if I mess up in front of everyone?" Then you mess up. And you know what? The world keeps spinning. The sun still rises. And the next day, you try again. Mrs. Chen put her hand on Rosie's shoulder. "But I don't think you're going to mess up. I think you're going to be magnificent." Rosie wanted to believe her. She really did. The days flew by faster than she wanted. 1 month until the showcase. 3 weeks. 2 weeks. Every practice session felt more important, more pressure-filled. Other students were practicing their pieces too, and Rosie could hear them through the walls. They all sounded so polished, so professional. 1 week before the showcase, Mr. Morrison announced that there would be a dress rehearsal. Everyone would perform their pieces in the recital hall, in front of the faculty, to get used to the space and the pressure. Victoria performed first. A complicated chop-in nocturne that she played flawlessly, her fingers flying across the keys. The faculty applauded politely. She smiled like a queen, accepting praise from her subjects. Then it was Rosie's turn. She walked onto the stage, her legs shaking so badly she wasn't sure they'd hold her up. The recital hall looked enormous from up here. The piano looked miles away. She sat down, placed her hands on the keys, and suddenly her mind went completely blank. She couldn't remember the first note, couldn't remember how the piece started. It was like someone had erased everything she'd learned. The silence stretched on. Someone coughed in the audience. She heard a whisper, a giggle. Then she felt a presence beside her. Mrs. Chen had come up on stage and was standing next to the piano. "Close your eyes, Rosie," she said softly. "Remember why you love this. Not because you have to prove something, not because people are watching, because it makes you feel alive." Rosie closed her eyes. She thought about that first night, pressing 3 keys and feeling like she'd discovered magic. She thought about the music that had called to her through closed doors. She thought about why she'd started this journey in the first place. Her hands found the keys, and she began to play. The music flowed out of her, imperfect but honest. She missed a note in the 3rd measure. Her tempo wavered slightly in the fast section, but she made it through to the end. When she opened her eyes, the faculty was smiling, not polite smiles. "Real ones. Better," Mr. Morrison said. "Much better. You've got 1 week to clean up those rough spots. I believe in you, Rosie." As she walked off stage, Victoria was waiting in the wings. "That was pathetic," she hissed. "You're going to humiliate yourself next week." But this time Rosie didn't look away. Maybe I'll surprise you." 1 week left. 7 days to prove she belonged here. 7 days to show everyone that the cleaner's little girl could become something more. The night before the winter showcase, Rosie couldn't eat dinner. Her mama had made her favorite meal, chicken and rice with sweet plantains. but it all tasted like cardboard in her mouth. "You need to eat something, baby," her mama said, worry lines creasing her forehead. "I can't. My stomach feels like it's full of butterflies." Get nervous butterflies? Or excited butterflies? Rosie thought about it. Both, I think. Her mama came around the table and pulled her into a hug. "You know what I see when I look at you? I see a girl who was brave enough to dream bigger than what the world told her she could have. Whether you play perfectly tomorrow or not, I'm already proud of you. You understand me?" Rosie nodded against her mama's shoulder, breathing in the familiar smell of her perfume mixed with cleaning products. "What if I let everyone down? The only person you need to worry about is yourself. You play for you, Rosie, not for them." That night, Rosie lay in bed, going over the piece in her mind. Her fingers moved against the blanket, playing invisible keys. She knew Far Elise backward and forward now. She'd practiced it so many times that sometimes she heard it in her dreams. But knowing it and performing it in front of 300 people were two completely different things. She finally fell asleep around midnight and dreamed she was on stage. But when she sat down at the piano, all the keys had turned to water. The next morning came too fast. Rosie put on her navy blazer with shaking hands. Her mama braided her hair and tied it with a ribbon, the same way she'd done for Rosie's first day of school every year. "You look beautiful," her mama said, blinking back tears. "My little girl, all grown up." They arrived at the academy 2 hours early. The recital hall was buzzing with activity. Students rushed around in their formal clothes. Parents fussed with their children's hair and outfits. Faculty members checked the sound system and adjusted the stage lights. Mrs. Chen found Rosie backstage. "How are you feeling?" "Like I might throw up." "That's normal. Every great performer gets nervous. The trick is to use that energy instead of letting it use you." She handed Rosie a bottle of water. "Drink this. Stay hydrated. And remember, you've played this piece perfectly 100 times. Today is just one more time. But what if no what ifs? Only when. When you walk out there, when you sit at that piano, when you play that first note, you'll remember that you belong there just as much as anyone else." The showcase started at 7 o'clock sharp. The recital hall was packed, every seat filled with parents in expensive clothes, faculty members in suits and dresses, and even some people Rosie recognized from the local newspaper. At the back of the hall, she spotted her mama sitting alone, wearing her best Sunday dress. The first student performed, then the second, then the third. Each one was good, really good. Victoria played her Chopin piece flawlessly, and the audience erupted in applause. She took her bow with a smile that said she knew she'd been perfect. Rosie was scheduled to perform eighth. As the seventh student took the stage, her heart started pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Her hands were sweating. Her legs felt like jelly. "Rosie Santos," Mr. Morrison announced, "performing Far Elise by Ludwig van Beethoven." This was it. No turning back now. Rosie walked onto the stage, and the lights were so bright she could barely see the audience. The piano stood in the center like a beautiful black giant. She'd played this same piano 100 times in practice, but tonight it looked different, more important somehow. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it slightly, the way Mrs. Chen had taught her. She placed her hands on the keys and felt their familiar smoothness under her fingers. Then she closed her eyes and took one deep breath, and she began to play. The opening notes of Far Elise floated through the hall, soft and sweet. Her right hand carried the melody, while her left hand provided gentle accompaniment. So far, so good. This was the easy part. Then came the first transition, where the piece shifted to a minor key. Her fingers found the notes automatically, muscle memory taking over. She wasn't thinking anymore. Just feeling. Just playing. The second section approached, the part that had given her so much trouble in practice. The fast section where her hands had to move quickly and precisely. This was where she'd messed up during the dress rehearsal. But tonight, something was different. Tonight she wasn't playing because she had to prove something to Victoria or the other students, or even herself. She was playing because she loved it, because the music needed to come out of her. Her fingers flew across the keys, hitting every note cleanly. The fast runs that had tripped her up before now felt natural, easy even. She could feel the energy of the piece building, the tension rising. Then came the return to the main theme, gentler now, more reflective, like coming home after a long journey. Rosie poured everything she had into these final measures. Every hour of practice, every moment of doubt, every tear she'd cried in frustration, every small victory. The final notes rang out in the silent hall. Rosie held her hands on the keys for a moment longer, letting the sound fade naturally into nothing. Then she opened her eyes. For a second, there was complete silence. Rosie's heart sank. Had she messed up? Had it been terrible? Then the applause started. Not polite, scattered clapping, real applause. People actually stood up from their seats. Her mama was crying in the back row, clapping so hard her hands must have hurt. Mrs. Chen was on her feet in the front row, her face glowing with pride. Even Mr. Morrison was smiling broadly, nodding his approval. But the moment that mattered most came when Rosie looked to the side of the stage. Victoria stood there with the other students waiting to perform. And for just a second, before she caught herself and put her mask back on, Victoria's face showed something Rosie had never seen there before. Respect. Rosie stood and took her bow. Her legs still shaking, but this time from relief and joy instead of fear. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. Backstage afterwards, she was surrounded by people. Parents she didn't know told her she was wonderful. Faculty members shook her hand. Timothy gave her a high five and said, "Told you you'd kill it." But the person she wanted to see was her mama. She found her near the back door, still crying happy tears. "Mama." They hugged tight, neither one caring that people were watching. "I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud. I was so scared. I know. But you did it anyway." "That's what brave looks like." Mrs. Chen appeared beside them. "Rosie, there's someone who wants to meet you." She led them to a woman in an elegant black dress who Rosie didn't recognize. "Rosie, this is Jennifer Wu. She's a concert pianist who performs all over the world. And she's also a talent scout." The woman extended her hand. "You have something special, young lady. I've heard a lot of students play tonight, many of them with years more training than you. But none of them had what you have." "What's that?" Rosie asked. "Heart, soul, the thing that makes music more than just notes on a page. I'd like to talk to you and your mother about opportunities. Competitions you might enter. Master classes with world-renowned teachers. Performances at larger venues." She handed Rosie's mama a business card. "Think about it. Call me when you're ready." After she walked away, Rosie and her mama just stared at each other. "Did that really just happen?" Rosie whispered. "I think it did, baby." The ride home that night felt like floating on a cloud. Rosie sat in the back seat of the bus, her head against the window, watching the city lights blur past. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible. Just another poor kid sitting on a bench, listening to music through closed doors. Now she was a student at a prestigious academy. Now talent scouts wanted to talk to her. Now she had opportunities stretching out in front of her like an endless road. But the best part, the part that mattered most, was simpler than all of that. She'd found the thing she was meant to do. The thing that made her feel most like herself. The thing that turned all the noise in her head into beauty. When they got home, her mama tucked her into bed like she used to when Rosie was little. "What are you thinking about?" Her mama asked. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am. That Mrs. Chen saw something in me. That you worked so hard so I could wait for you at the academy. That I got to touch that piano the first time. You know what I think? I think luck is what happens when talent meets opportunity. You had the talent all along, baby. It was just waiting for its chance to shine." Her mama kissed her forehead and turned off the light. In the darkness, Rosie smiled. Tomorrow, she'd go back to the academy for more lessons, more practice, more hard work. There would be more Victorias to deal with, more challenges to face, more moments of doubt. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight she'd proven something important. Not to the audience or the judges, or the talent scout. She'd proven it to herself. She wasn't just the cleaner's little girl anymore. She was Rosie Santos, pianist. And this was only the beginning of her story. Outside her window, the moon hung bright and full in the sky. And if she listened carefully, if she let her mind drift just right, she could almost hear it singing. Something that sounded a lot like Claire de Lune. The song that had started everything. The song that had changed her life forever.